What's up, kiddos? Today we are going to take a look at the Transcontinental Railroad, Manifest Destiny, and Westward expansion. We're going to be doing a review over this because you've already learned about it in your social studies class.
I've been working on the railroad all the livelong day. I've been working on the railroad just to pass the time away. Don't you hear the whistles blowing?
Hear the whistle blow.
Rise up so early in the morning. Don't you hear the captain?
All right, so we're connecting the Union Pacific Railroad, which is at this time is baited out to about Omaha, Nebraska, and the Central Pacific Railroad out on the west coast here, Sacramento. So San Francisco's on the coast, Pacific Ocean, Sacramento's in a little bit inland California there. So starting in these two spots, these two railroads are going to start building and working towards each other, and they're going to end up meeting out here in northern Utah. Now, both of these railroad lines are going to be built by a massive amount of immigrants. Immigrants from Europe on the Union Pacific Railroad side, coming from Omaha, Nebraska, and a lot of immigrants from China on the West Coast side, Central Pacific Railroad. Over 10,000 Chinese immigrants are going to be a part of building this railroad. Let's check this out.
Most Chinese immigrants arrived in San Francisco, but many soon departed for the High Sierra, where they mined for gold. And it was there, when the flood of Chinese immigrants met the Transcontinental Railroad under construction, that history was made. Stalled in the Sierra Mountains and suffering an acute shortage of workers, Charles Crocker of the Central Pacific Railroad suggested hiring nearby Chinese miners. His bosses thought them too slight for heavy construction and not fit to handle blasting powder. Crocker reminded them they had built the Great Wall of China and had in fact invented gunpowder. 50 were hired with great success, and soon thousands more were enlisted.
They would be lowered over cliffs, and they would drill holes, and then they'd set the dynamite in them. And then they'd light the dynamite, and then they'd pull them up by these baskets. And they had to get out of there before the dynamite exploded.
The work was grueling, performed almost entirely by hand. With pickaxes, hammers, and crowbars, workers chipped out rail beds. Dirt and rock were carried away in baskets and carts. Tree stumps had to be rooted out, tracks laid, spikes driven, aqueducts and tunnels constructed.
At one point, the Central Pacific Railroad had 90% of its workforce composed of Chinese Americans. And so they play a large role in actually creating the economic infrastructure that ties the West to the East.
All right, question for you guys. It is question time. Which of the railroad cars below represents workers that both railroad construction forces had in common? Is it Irish? Did they both have Irish workers? Did they both have Chinese workers? Or was it that both had immigrant workers? So this is going to pause now. It's going to turn over to you to answer the question on your screen, and then we'll keep going. Correct, right? You got that right? You got that right? The primary workforce on both the Union Pacific and the Central Pacific were immigrants. That's right. So these trains that they're building these tracks for are steam trains, and steam trains come from the first successful steam engine, which was invented by a gentleman named Thomas Newcomb. And Thomas Newcomb, and he creates this first commercially viable steam engine. And then eventually someone takes this steam engine and they put it onto cart to make a train, and they put it into factories. It's going to be a huge part of industrialization and just the whole urbanization and this massive change, not just in America, but around the world. It's all going to come from this steam engine. Robert Fulton, over here in the United States, he takes a steam engine and he throws it on a boat in about the year 1807, and he creates the first steamboat. Peter Cooper Peter Cooper takes a steam engine and he slaps it on a cart here, and he, in 1830, makes the first steam-powered train in the United States. And, quickly people see that this is going to be a good technology, that it's going to provide a lot of improvements, and people are on board to make money off of trains. Okay, so we go steam engine, steamboat, steam train, and now we got SpaceX, we got rockets, and we got Lamborghinis, and we just got all these amazing transportation things, and it's all stemming back from the steam engine, though. Let's check this out.
Did you know trains played a crucial role in the American Civil War? They were used to transport troops and supplies, significantly impacting the outcome of the war. Railroads allowed for rapid movement of large numbers of soldiers, which was a game changer in warfare. Trains have been vital in shaping history. Subscribe for more intriguing facts.
Subscribe for more facts. Another question, about to turn it over to you here. What major conflict began in 1861 and was occurring back in the eastern United States in 1863 as this railroad construction project is starting? I'm going to turn it over to you. You're going to choose. Is it the American Revolution? Is it the American Civil War? Or the French and Indian War? You decide. All right, I hope you got that right. I hope you said that the American Civil War was raging back on the East Coast, all the way out to about Texas during this time period. So there is a huge, enormous war going on, which means that a lot of resources are needed for that. A lot of people are needed for that. It's taken up a lot of the country's attention. However, even though this massive event is occurring, people are still willing to put time and effort into this railroad because of the economic potential that it offers. Okay, we got another question here. Which answer choice below correctly describes the most significant improvement that steam locomotives offered over water-based transportation? So which of these is true as to why a steam train was better than a boat, even a steamboat? You decide. Steam trains could carry more goods than boats because train cars were many times larger than even the biggest Mississippi River steamboats. Or steam trains could carry goods and people to more locations as they were not limited to waterways. Turning it over to you. All right, steamboats, they were great for a while. You could get a lot of stuff loaded up onto your steamboat, and you could travel with goods and people, and you could go all the way up and down the river, like the Mississippi River, places like that. And it's really cool because now all of a sudden, instead of having to rely on your ox cart and your donkeys and your horses to pull a little wagon up and down a dirt road, now you can throw stuff on a boat and you can move it faster, maybe, and you can move it a whole lot further and easier. However, you are still limited to being stuck on that river. But as this train comes out, as the steam train is developed, they lay down tracks, and you can take that train anywhere that you can lay down tracks. So if you want to go from here to over there, but there's no river going that way, that's fine. Lay down some train tracks, put your train on it, boom, take your goods and your people that way, and now all of a sudden you are selling things over there, and you are bringing goods and people over there. So the terrain out west has a lot of mountains and valleys, and it's what slows down their progress. That is why the train track coming from the Central Pacific Railroad in Sacramento, California, is moving a whole lot less than the Union Pacific out there coming from Omaha, Nebraska. Okay, this is flat land. We're talking about the Great Plains out in the middle of the country, and it is just a whole lot faster and easier to build train tracks there, even though they do have problems and issues that they have to deal with, particularly with moving through land with Native Americans. And check this out. This is really cool. This graphic here is showing you how the population changes. So it started back there in the 1700s. You got 13 colonies, right? We got a little bit of expansion across the Appalachian Mountains to the Midwest. And look, at 1830, it starts to pick up. All of a sudden, it's going to start spreading a whole lot faster here because that's when the train comes into play. And then, watch, after we hit 1865 and the Civil War ends, this is going to blow up big time. All of a sudden, it's going to start growing like crazy. Just boom, boom, boom. And notice how these dark areas here, around Chicago and Detroit, Ohio, those areas are growing darker and thicker because more and more people are moving there, as well as the people are migrating west across the country now. As train tracks are built out that way, it makes it so much faster and easier for people to move out that way. We're talking about migration. Make sure you know what that word migration means. It means when people move from one place to another. Migration. Yes. Manifest Destiny. This is an idea that came from a guy named John S. O'Sullivan, and he wrote this newspaper article, like an editorial article about Manifest Destiny, and I pulled some quotes out of it that I really like. He said things like, "The far-reaching, the boundless future will be the era of American greatness. The nation of many nations is destined to manifest to mankind the excellence of divine principles. Yes, we are the nation of progress, of individual freedom, of universal enfranchisement and equality of rights. For this blessed mission to the nations of the world has America been chosen, and her high example shall smite unto the death the tyranny of kings, hierarchs, and oligarchs, and carry the glad tidings of peace and goodwill." What he was trying to say with all that amazing sounding stuff was that America is destined by God to move across this continent from the East Coast to the West Coast, spreading its culture, its economic ideas, the technology, the political structure, everything across the continent from sea to shining sea, just like the song says, right? Manifest Destiny. Another big important thing here is this painting. This painting by John Gast. It is called American Progress, and it is a very, very famous painting. In all of your U.S. history classes, you will revisit this American Progress by John Gast painting, and it is really kind of cool. What we're going to do is kind of dive into it and take a little bit of a look at some details in it. Here we see this lady. She represents America, and she is moving west across the country, and with her, technology and things like that are following her, right? She's bringing the telegraph lines. Alexander Graham Bell invented that telegraph. You've got pioneers on their Conestoga wagons like we've talked about. You got the buffalo that are running away, right? The Native Americans are running away. We've got some animals down here in the corner. Also notice the animals are looking back at the Americans that are coming from the east, and they are, they look concerned. They look concerned. Eventually, we've got stagecoaches, right, coming out from the East Coast, and then finally that railroad that we've been talking about. You can see the railroads here in the background. Notice we got these pioneer farmers and stuff like that here, so we're talking about how, check out the sky. The sun over here, very bright. As we move across the painting, Rocky Mountains, West Coast over here, see the ocean, it gets darker. So what is the artist trying to tell us about that? When the artist makes the sky go from bright sunniness to dark, stormy cloud stuff over here, what is he trying to communicate? What is the artist trying to communicate to us about this? I'm going to turn this over to you and let you answer this. It seems to me that the artist has the opinion that all of this American progress, all this moving west is not necessarily a good thing in the artist's opinion, because it is going to have impacts. It's going to have impacts on the environment, right? As they are moving west, they are going to be changing the landscape by building things, by building the railroad, by cutting down forests and setting up farms and things like we saw in the picture. We are talking about progress. We're talking about manifest destiny in the eyes of the Americans at the time, particularly Mr. John O'Sullivan. It was a good thing. It was progress that needed to happen and was destined to happen. We've made some progress here. Let's keep it going. I mentioned a little bit about this earlier. Steam power used to power factories and trains. Way back to that steam engine when it was created. The very first steam engine was a guy named James Watt, but his wasn't that great, and The other gentleman we learned about is the one who kind of perfected it and turned it into something that was commercially viable. So prior to this, factories used water wheels. Maybe you've seen a water wheel. You know, the factories had to be built along a river, and the water flows past and it spins the wheel, and that wheel spins and moves the equipment in the factory. Well, as soon as you can hook a steam engine up to your factory instead of the water wheel, now you don't have to have your factory right by the river. You can have your factories anywhere, and that makes a big deal here. Steam trains allowed more goods to be moved farther away from the factories than horse carts or boats. We've talked a little bit about that, and here's a great visual example of that. So if we look at the circle here, say this circle, if I've got a horse cart and my factory's right here, then by horse cart, you know, I got like 1, 2, 3 towns around me that I can deliver my goods to. Let's say that I make clocks in my factory out of wood from the local area, so I can load these clocks that I make onto horse carts and sell them in my town and just the closest little towns around me. Check it out, we've got the river now. Okay, so once we have the river and the steamboat, now I can take my clocks and put them on a boat, and I can sell them to, you know, town number 4 here, town number 5, town number 6. That one's probably even close enough, town number 7. So I'm expanding my market with the steamboat, but still I'm limited to what I can reach from this river. And then when I throw in the steam train, now I can, from my factory here, we can go and throw down railroad tracks everywhere, and all of a sudden I can take my clocks that I'm making out here, say in Omaha, Nebraska, and I can sell them anywhere back on the East Coast. I can ship them all the way back to the East Coast. I can ship them to New York City and sell people my clocks in New York City, and they will think that they are so cool because they have my custom-made clocks from Omaha, Nebraska. From 1830 to 1860, railroads had expanded out west to Chicago, St. Louis, Memphis, New Orleans. All right, so we see that growth there. And we are looking at this Transcontinental Railroad, and by 1870, I think it's like 1869 is when it finishes. So they meet together here up in Utah. A little bit more development on this map here. So 1860 to 1890, after this Transcontinental Railroad is completed, now all of a sudden even more railroads are going to be built. And even look at all these other cities that are going to be growing and coming online out here. We talked about St. Louis. We've talked about Omaha. Well, now Kansas City is going to become a big deal. Denver, further out west. See, there you go. That's further out west than any place else anybody's been. And now all of a sudden out in Denver is this enormous city is going to start to grow in Colorado because of the railroads, because the railroad makes it easy. You can get on the train in Washington, D.C., and you can ride the train all the way out to Denver now. You can say, hey, I'm going to move my family to the mountains out in Denver, Colorado. Sounds wonderful. Get away from the city. You know, what was that movie? The Wilderness Family. Check out The Wilderness Family if you've never heard of that. Fantastic movie. This is all about money. Everything that we've been talking about here, because everything in life is about money, you know, even though it's not always supposed to be, and it shouldn't always be, but hopefully you've learned about God, gold, and glory, right? The 3 G's, the reasons why anyone does anything. Hopefully that's something that's been talked about in one of your social studies classes coming up here. So money, 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 right? The economic impact is what this is all about. With these railroads connecting from the East Coast to the West Coast now, you can transfer goods, you can transfer people. Okay, if you own a railroad, you can sell tickets to people. Hey, you want to go to San Francisco? You want to go to Sacramento? You live on the East Coast? I'll sell you a ticket. I'll take you all the way out there on my train. Bring your suitcase, bring your family, let's go. You can move. People are going to start selling the land along these railroads. Towns are going to develop along these railroads. Like we mentioned, Denver. All throughout this railroad path, as it moves west across the country, new towns are going to boom. They're going to pop up because of the expansion of this railroad. It's going to provide jobs for people. You know, when people get jobs, they're making money. They can go buy stuff, and then the factories that sell stuff that the people want to buy, they're making more money, they're hiring more people. All right, you got more stores, more factories, more goods being made, more money being made, and you're going to see a huge economic boom in the country because of this Transcontinental Railroad, the railroad in general, and industrialization, urbanization. So I want to make sure that you understand what I just talked about here. So you tell me, how did trains make it better? What are the benefits of the trains versus the boats and the horse carts? That's something I've been talking about for the past couple minutes here. Let's check and make sure. Let's pause. Let's check and make sure you got this. I'm going to turn it over to you. You answer the question here, and then we'll move on. right? I'm hoping that you gathered that the idea here is that the trains are making people more money, right? It's making things more efficient. People can travel further. They can carry more goods and more people. And boom, our Transcontinental Railroad is now complete. Look at that. Look at that. They met there. Promontory, Utah. 10th of May, 1869. Near Promontory, Utah, the two railroad lines finally met. Americans could travel quickly and easily from one coast to the other. So they had this cool big old ceremony here where the presidents of the two railroads, they came together there. That's them shaking hands in the middle of the picture. And they had a big golden railroad spike that they drove into the ground there to connect the last two pieces of the railroad together. And the Transcontinental Railroad